Hi guys, sorry in advance, but I'm gonna do my best that I can do here. And I'm sorry if you can't really see this too well, but I'm gonna full screen it and then also ask if the professor wants to upload it. So if she does, then you'll be able to see it there. So I did the second half of chapter 6. Maddie has the first half, so I might be like referring to what she did. So I have chapter 6, which is shopping for sex. So the main point of this chapter, or at least of my section, was sex and money as concomitant, which I had to look up, so it's naturally accompanying. So sex and money going together, so almost like using sex as a currency. So to what end does treating sex as a commodity lead us? So that's kind of the question that she's looking through in this chapter, and she kind of leads to two answers: that women are consumers, and then women are the things to be consumed. So again, using sex as kind of a currency in this state. So she refers a lot to Sex and the City in this chapter, which is a TV show that was popular in the early 2000s. And it's 4 women that are kind of doing the like men's side of casual sex, where they're kind of taking back their sexuality, doing like casual hookups and being the one who leaves early in the morning and saying like, oh, just back to my, life. They're kind of playing the role of the guy. And that was obviously new when this came out into the world, and women loved it because it was, a liberating thing for them to be watching and to try to do in their own lifetimes as well. So women shopping for sex or women selling sex, again, that's the question of the sex as a commodity. This show's popularity had an impact on women all over America. So like I said, there was a lot of women that were seeing this and realizing like, oh, I can do this. This is popular and okay, which it is, but the show was making it seem like it's okay because it's something that's being aired. So sex is an item of consumption. Where does it actually lead us to? So in order to answer this question, she interviewed 3 different women that are all parts of different, like working class and all that stuff, different ages. So the author took to interviewing these 3 women that, in my opinion, like after reading it, I think they do fall into the category of female chauvinist pigs that she's trying to identify as these women that are okay with the new raunch culture and okay with living their lifestyles in that way. So she's asking about their outlook on sex and what sex means to them and how they go about it in their daily life. And from different ways of life, they're all in different professions and all that, but they seem to be taking after the Sex and the City lifestyle that's being promoted. So Annie was the first person that she interviewed, and I kind of took my own like impression on this, that the beginning of every woman that she introduced, she kind of gave a physical attribute description of them. And so I kind of felt like that was interesting because she kind of explains them all as like cute and sweet and pretty and beautiful. And I don't know, I feel like there's some kind of connotation coming off of it that like beautiful, sweet girls shouldn't be acting in a like way that would allow them to have casual sex. And I don't know, I mean, that's just a personal opinion. I feel like it might be like a bias that's being shown through the writing. But again, that's just a personal thing that I saw with this. But she describes all 3 of them. So Annie, she didn't give a profession for her, but she said she's beautiful 29-year-old with deep blue eyes and a pale, perfect complexion. So she's just kind of supposed to be your normal, girl out exploring her sexuality. And she states that she wants to get as many notches on her belt as possible. She wants to get to 100. So notches on your belt is that phrase that people use to say how many people they've had sexual intercourse with. And I think this represents a lot of people right now trying to put a number to their sexual experiences instead of identifying personally with the actual sexual experiences and what they're getting from them, or more so just numerical quantity over quality. So she's kind of just talking about how this type of just adding up how many people you can be with is feeling like a way of conforming to society now instead of like a liberating thing. It's kind of what everybody seems to be doing, so it's kind of counteractive of what it was supposed to be in the first place, which was liberating. She also talks about her interest in porn and her interest in how she was playing with Barbies as a child, and now there's women out there that actually look like Barbies. There's, she calls them plastics. There's women that have had a lot of surgeries and things to change the way that they look to kind of fit this look now, and how that interest has sparked her. She identifies like a guy when she leaves in the morning, which was interesting because she was saying, like, oh, now I used to get hurt all the time by sticking around and being upset when he wanted to leave and continue with his day the next day after a one-night stand. And now she feels like a guy with the ability to leave on her own, and that's empowering for her. She reports some feeling of being pathetic after one-night stands, which I think is sometimes a societal pressure from a lot of people saying, like, oh, women shouldn't have casual sex, but it's okay for men. So I think that she's kind of feeling that pressure. The next person was Meg. So she was stated as a very successful, busy lawyer with strawberry blonde hair and a pretty smile. So again, with the pretty look is like clean and it shouldn't be disturbed, which is kind of the bias I'm getting from this. But she said her interview on sexual encounters is based on a feeling of winning and not usually personally into the men. So she's kind of seeing it as a game and how she can win, kind of like a power game. And so she said she gets turned on by novelty and the challenge of a new man, not by monogamy. And so that's an issue for her because she said she does plan to marry, but worries about becoming bored with one man, and said that even like after 6 months, she's bored of somebody, even if she liked them from the beginning. So I think that's kind of an implication of the new way of sexual casual relationships that is kind of rubbing off on her in a way that she wants to have that power of being individual, but she does want to get married one day, and that takes away from the idea of being able to jump around in sexual relationships. So Lynn is identified as being aggressive, and it shapes her whole personality. It's not just a personality trait for her, but she's a sweet-faced, 2 pigtails, looked much younger than 32, which I also thought was interesting to state, like, that she looks young, and that might be something to hold against her, because I think as long as you are legally able to be making decisions about your sex slave, some people do just look really young, so I feel like it's just like a weird thing to point out, but whatever. Again, this is another woman that says she associates with the guys and avoids classic girly things. She said she'd rather sit around with guys and talk about what they talk about because she doesn't want to talk about new clothes and fashion and classic girly things that a lot of girls in groups would be talking about that she doesn't want anything to do with. She said that if she does end up having conversations with girls, they end up being kind of raunchy. Like, girls want to talk about, you know, when they're going to get engaged, but she wants to talk about, you know, the details of the sex that they had the night before. So she doesn't really fit into that scope of female group conversation, and that's why she wants to be with the guys. She said she's a fan of strip clubs, and it's interesting how she described that she's not a fan of strip clubs in the way that she wants to be there to see the show or to see the sexuality, but she said she actually gets amusement out of the boredom on the women's faces. So I think it might also be like she's kind of going to prove a point, or going for unconventional reasons more so than for the reason that they were created. So she doesn't really have the sex as currency attitude as much as the last 2 women did, where it's kind of like, oh, it's power, or I won. She stated that she needs attraction for her to be able to engage in sex with another person. So she kind of falls out of that sex as currency attitude that a lot of people have. And she kind of is the outlier in this group of women, I guess. So who is this mythological man stereotype that these women are aiming to be like? Because it's so often that if women are doing raunchy things, or, like they said, leaving a one-night stand in the morning and feeling empowered, it's doing what the man would do. So the author kind of works to identify, like, who this mythological guy is that they all seem to think that they are being like. And then this kind of brings back the same, like, outlook that the entire book has, which is if you can't beat them, join them. It's kind of this idea that, like, oh, we can't get these men to stop being raunchy and to stop mistreating the way that sexuality is, like, identified. And so if you can't beat them and you can't get them to stop that, just join them, even if it's something that you don't technically think is right or is something that people should be doing. Just an interesting outlook on it. But that's kind of coming back into this group again, is like these women are like, oh, I'll just be like a guy because we can't stop them from the things that they're doing that aren't great. So they also stated in this that history is changing. Not history is changing, but we're changing from history. She interviewed this one author who was saying that seeing her daughters grow up and grow into their sexuality allows them to rebel against 50s upbringing that the author had herself when she was being raised. She stated that her daughters don't feel guilty for being sexual beings, and why should they feel guilty, because men never did, which I thought was a great point. That's just kind of how our world is going now, which is good in my opinion. But she stated that even though it is good for sexual freedom and to be able to express yourself in that way as a woman now, we need to also focus on breaking the glass ceiling and breaking all those other issues like gender pay gap and discrimination in the workplace, those kind of things that are also affecting women in everyday life. It's not just about sex. So that's kind of the point that she was making there. So she said sexual freedom can't be a smokescreen for how far we haven't come, which I think is an interesting quote, because it's very true. Like, I think a lot of people are like, oh, we're going to say we like porn now and we're going to be in all these, like, we'll act different in public, but it's like there's still obviously issues within pay and issues within like professional settings and all that will be covered up by this like outlook that things are changing, when there's a lot further we can go still. So in conclusion, this chapter is used to outline the use of sex as a currency in our culture. So again, like the women in the beginning were stating that they were taking a win from a man when they get to leave in the morning, and some women were saying that they're getting notches in their belt. It's like making money in that sense is very like, doesn't line up perfectly, but you get what I'm saying. The author states that women are obsessing over porn stars, strippers, and pinups, which aren't even real people. While these are figures that we know nothing about. We don't know their political opinions. We don't know what they stand for. We don't know how they would act, what they would stand for, and we're still obsessing over them as role models and idols. By doing this, we're shifting our focus onto a distraction and not anything to shatter the glass ceiling. Again, like I mentioned, this sex craze for women is dissipating the power of women to make revolutionary change. And so I think that, again, this is a personal opinion, but I feel like it's hard to make it black and white, because I feel like a lot of times the author is like taking away from what the sexual revolution has done to women, because we do have more freedom now. We aren't as seen down upon as like a sexual woman in the 50s would be. We have a lot more freedom in that way, and I don't think that's something to like make less important just because we have other things to be fighting against. Obviously we have other things that we need to progress in, and there's other gender issues, but I don't think that it should be saying that this is merely a distraction. I think it's also an important thing that we have come to accept women and their freedom to be showcasing their sexuality. So I think as it is important that they're saying the power of women to revolutionize is being shaded by this, I think it's equally as important that this came to light, and it will hopefully lead to more later on. So I'm gonna see if she wants to upload this presentation. Thank you guys for sticking through it. That was kind of rough, but I hope everybody's safe. You guys have a good day.